It's strange how one of the deadliest wars in human history is still explained with a single sentence. World War I started because Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated. But when we look closer, this explanation falls apart. It feels too simple. How could one man's death trigger the mobilization of 70 million soldiers, the collapse of 4 empires, and over 20 million deaths? Assassinations were not rare in Europe at the time. Between 1881 and 1914, 7 major political leaders were killed, yet none of those incidents sparked global war. France survived the murder of President Sadi Carnot. Russia survived the assassination of its interior minister, and Serbia had its own political killings. Nothing caused a world war. So why did the Sarajevo assassination ignite a continent-wide fire? To understand, we must explore deeper forces that had been building for decades, waiting for a spark. Europe in 1914 resembled a carefully arranged chessboard. Nations claimed to want peace, yet all acted as if war was inevitable. Political alliances, military planning, nationalism, economic competition, and misperceptions created a system primed for disaster. The assassination acted less as a cause than as a catalyst, exposing these fault lines. The alliance system played a critical role. On one side was the Triple Entente: France, Russia, and Britain. On the other, the Triple Alliance: Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Designed to deter aggression, these alliances created a domino effect. Any regional dispute could escalate uncontrollably. Germany and Austria-Hungary felt backed by mutual guarantees. France and Russia felt compelled to defend each other. Misreading intentions and overestimating threats transformed defensive postures into provocations. Germany feared Russia's military expansion. The 1913 Great Military Program promised Russia the largest army in Europe by 1917. German intelligence concluded that delaying war would leave them encircled and vulnerable. Diaries reveal a now or never mentality. One diplomat wrote, "If we wait, Russia will crush us." Germany also assumed supporting Austria-Hungary could keep the conflict local, underestimating Russia's willingness to fully mobilize. Russia viewed defending Serbia as essential to maintaining influence in the Balkans. Slavic populations looked to Russia for protection. Tsar Nicholas II knew that if Austria-Hungary crushed Serbia unopposed, Russia's prestige would vanish. Foreign Minister Sazonov warned, "If you trample Serbia, you trample the reputation of Russia." Strategic interest control of warm water ports and trade routes made intervention almost unavoidable. Austria-Hungary faced existential threats. Its empire included more than a dozen ethnic groups, and Serbian nationalism threatened cohesion. Count Berchtold, Austria's foreign minister, wrote, "If Serbia is not crushed now, we may not survive the next decade." Germany encouraged decisive action, offering the famous blank check, which assured Vienna of Berlin's unconditional backing. France still carried scars from the Franco-Prussian War of 1870–71. Losing Alsace-Lorraine left emotional and strategic wounds. Plan the 17th emphasized aggressive offensive operations to regain lost territory, and newspapers glorified "Leo revenge, revenge." French leaders believed war with Germany was inevitable. One general wrote, "Germany has humiliated us once, never again." Britain, while not emotionally tied to European borders, had global stakes. Its naval supremacy underpinned the empire. Germany's naval expansion threatened Britain's dominance, prompting panic. Admiral John Fisher declared, "The nation that rules the sea rules the world." Britain acted not only for Belgium but to prevent a German-dominated continent from threatening trade and global influence. Fear, alliances, and misperception created a paradox. Every nation acted defensively, yet these moves escalated tensions. Military planning and rigid mobilization schedules amplified the danger. Germany's Schlieffen Plan required rapid invasion of France. France's Plan 17 called for immediate offensive action to reclaim Alsace-Lorraine. Russian mobilization had to start before Germany could preemptively strike, while Austria-Hungary's deployment added pressure. Once troops began moving along railways, reversal was nearly impossible, locking Europe into war. The Balkans were the most volatile region. Austrian generals feared Serbian nationalism. Serbia, emboldened by victories in the Balkan Wars, challenged Austrian authority. Nationalism and public sentiment intensified pressures. Crowds cheered Austria's declaration of war. Berliners shouted "to Paris." Paris erupted in patriotic fervor. Leaders interpreted this as support for decisive action, though cautionary voices existed. Norman Angell warned, "Europe cannot profit from war. All will suffer." Tsar Nicholas II wrote to Kaiser Wilhelm II, "I fear a calamity for our people." Wilhelm replied, "If you continue mobilizing, my armies must answer." Diplomacy existed, but it raced against timetables, public pressure, and entrenched fears. Austria's blank check illustrates miscalculation. Berlin assumed a short war would strengthen Austria and weaken Russia. But Russian mobilization and France's alliance obligations escalated the conflict. Germany declared war on Russia on August 1st and on France on August 3rd. Germany's invasion of Belgium triggered Britain's entry on August 4th, motivated by treaty obligations and fear of a German-dominated Europe. Economic and colonial pressures added hidden layers. Germany's industrial rise threatened Britain and France. Steel, chemical industries, and shipping challenged monopolies. Trade, investment, and imperial supply routes like the Berlin-Baghdad Railway intensified fear. The Moroccan and Bosnian crises had already shown how misperception, nationalism, and alliances could escalate tensions. By 1914, Europe was a continent where regional disputes and global ambitions intersected, with misperceptions creating a perfect storm. Public opinion and nationalism entrenched escalation. Newspapers fueled fear and glorified militarism. Crowds cheered military parades and declarations, reinforcing leaders' belief in popular support. Yet ordinary citizens underestimated the destructive potential of modern weapons. Machine guns, heavy artillery, and chemical warfare turned Europe into a killing field. Leaders believed in strategy, yet misjudged the technology they commanded. The July crisis telegrams revealed tragic irony. Tsar Nicholas II pleaded for calm. Wilhelm insisted Russian mobilization forced Germany's hand. Both rulers wanted peace, yet each was trapped by alliances and military timetables. Defensive intentions were interpreted as offensive threats, amplifying tensions. Austria, Germany, Russia, France, and Britain all miscalculated the mirror effects of each other's movements. By August 4, 1914, Europe was engulfed in war. Germany's invasion of Belgium not only violated Belgian neutrality, but also triggered Britain's entry. Britain's justification publicly rested on treaty obligations, yet deeper motives included strategic fear. A German-dominated continent threatened the empire's global trade, colonial possessions, and naval supremacy. Britain's planners had long warned that losing maritime control would make the empire vulnerable, and public opinion supported decisive action. Suddenly, a local conflict in the Balkans had transformed into a continental catastrophe. The early weeks of the war reveal how miscalculations compounded. Austria-Hungary had expected a brief, localized campaign against Serbia. Germany assumed backing Vienna would contain the conflict. Russia mobilized to pressure Austria without provoking Germany. France believed supporting Russia would deter German aggression, not provoke it. Britain assumed neutrality could buy time. Individually, each decision seemed rational. Together, they created an unstoppable chain reaction. Defensive strategies became offensive threats in the eyes of other powers. Rigid military timetables allowed little room for diplomatic flexibility. Once mobilization trains began rolling, leaders were trapped by their own plans. Nationalism, propaganda, and public sentiment played a silent but powerful role in escalating the war. Newspapers across Europe glorified militarism, warning of imminent invasion and national humiliation. Crowds celebrated war declarations and military parades, creating an illusion of popular support. Leaders interpreted these reactions as approval, Yet ordinary citizens had little understanding of modern warfare's lethality. Machine guns, artillery, and poison gas would soon turn Europe into a landscape of unprecedented death. Confidence in military strategy clashed tragically with the technological reality of industrialized war. The July crisis correspondence, especially the Willy-Niki telegrams between Kaiser Wilhelm II and Tsar Nicholas II, shows the tragic misperception at the heart of the conflict. Nicholas repeatedly warned of potential disaster. Wilhelm insisted German mobilization was a defensive necessity. Both rulers desired peace, yet they were constrained by alliance obligations, military planning, and fear of appearing weak. The war was not the result of a single blunder, but a systemic inevitability. Each power acted rationally in isolation, while the combination of actions ensured catastrophe. The Balkans remained the immediate flashpoint. Austrian generals obsessively analyzed the South Slav problem, viewing Serbian nationalism as existential. Serbia, emboldened by Balkan victories, believed Austria was a declining power that could be challenged. Defensive postures were misread as aggression, producing the mirror effect. Each side's mobilization triggered the others, amplifying tension. By the time diplomacy intervened, momentum toward war was unstoppable. Economic pressures further fueled the crisis. Germany's industrial growth threatened British and French markets. By 1910, German steel output surpassed Britain's. Chemical industries dominated global trade. Shipping expansion challenged long-standing monopolies. Russia relied on foreign investments from France and Britain, while Austria-Hungary felt growing German economic influence. Imperial projects like the Berlin-Baghdad Railway demonstrated that strategic and economic interests intertwined with military planning. Trade and infrastructure concerns turned political disputes into matters of national survival, making leaders more willing to risk conflict. Colonial rivalries mirrored European tensions. Germany challenged French and British dominance in Africa during the Moroccan crises, heightening suspicion and preparing public opinion for confrontation. Austria-Hungary and Russia's Balkan struggle reflected similar imperial ambitions. By 1914, Europe's conflicts were no longer merely regional, they were global, with overlapping ambitions and misperceptions creating a perfect storm. Localized disputes could and did rapidly escalate into worldwide war. Mobilization itself became irreversible. Millions of soldiers boarded trains. Artillery was positioned along borders, and generals issued pre-written orders. Once set in motion, stopping the war became nearly impossible. Leaders' illusions of control Austria, assuming Russia would stay passive, Germany expecting Britain to remain neutral, Russia believing Germany would not act proved tragically flawed. The war unfolded as much because of systemic rigidity as individual choices. Decisions taken with confidence and isolation cascaded into chaos when combined across multiple nations. The human cost was unprecedented. Modern weaponry, industrial-scale logistics, and entrenched strategies produced staggering casualties. Over 10 million soldiers died in 4 years. Civilians perished from famine, disease, and targeted attacks. Leaders' confidence in limited controlled warfare shattered against the reality of trench stalemates, artillery barrages, and chemical weapons. Early optimism gave way to total war, consuming the continent and reshaping global power structures. The post-war period reveals how initial misperceptions persisted. The Treaty of Versailles aimed to secure lasting peace but instead planted seeds for future conflict. Article 231, the War Guilt Clause, assigned full blame to Germany, ignoring shared responsibility. Reparations destabilized the German economy, fueling political extremism. Nationalist resentment provided fertile ground for movements like the rise of Adolf Hitler. In essence, the same fears, pride, and miscalculations that caused World War I re-emerged, creating a path toward World War II. Historians emphasize the multi-causal nature of the war. Fritz Fischer highlighted German militarism and expansionist ambitions, while others stress Austria's ethnic fears, Russia's Balkan strategy, France's desire for revenge, Britain's global calculations, and Germany's now or never mindset. The war was not the result of a single villain or a single event. It emerged from the interaction of multiple pressures, misperceptions, and rigid systems. World War I teaches broader lessons about history and human behavior. Short-term rational decisions, when combined with systemic pressures, can yield catastrophic outcomes. Fear, misperception, nationalism, alliance obligations, and economic competition interacted in ways that made conflict inevitable once the spark occurred. Leaders acted rationally in isolation, yet collectively created a situation beyond anyone's control. History rarely turns on a single moment. It flows from decades of structural forces that shape outcomes long before events appear imminent. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand did not create the war. It revealed Europe's fragility. Alliances, military timetables, nationalism, economic competition, and systemic misperceptions made escalation almost unavoidable. Each decision seemed defensible in isolation, yet collectively, they ensured catastrophe. The spark of Sarajevo ignited pre-existing tinder, transforming latent tensions into a global conflagration. In analyzing World War I, it becomes clear that simplicity in historical explanation is dangerous. While textbooks often point to one bullet in Sarajevo, reality was far more complex. Political, military, economic, and social forces interacted over decades, producing a system where war was not merely possible, it was built into the structure of European power. Understanding this allows us to see how modern conflicts may also arise from interconnected pressures, not singular events. The lessons of 1914 are timeless. Fear, nationalism, misperception, and rigid systems can turn defensive decisions into offensive escalations. Leaders may act rationally, yet systems can trap them, making outcomes unavoidable. History demonstrates that catastrophic results often emerge not from individual malice but from structural vulnerabilities, psychological pressures, and long-term strategic rivalries. World War I was the product of such a system, a continent primed for war, waiting for a spark that only served to ignite what was already inevitable. Ultimately, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the trigger, not the cause. Europe's descent into war was the consequence of decades of tension. Alliance networks, military planning, nationalism, economic competition, and misperceptions combined to make conflict almost inevitable. Leaders believed they were acting defensively. Yet, collectively, their rational actions produced catastrophe on an unprecedented scale. The war's tragic legacy reminds us that complex systems, human psychology, and structural pressures shape history more than singular events.